Hi, I'm James Surowiecki for the Business Pages. My column this week is about the current pervasive sense of anxiety that people are feeling about Apple's prospects going forward. Apple, 5 or 6 months ago, was really one of the most beloved companies on the planet. People thought its ceiling was sky high, and people were actually talking about it becoming potentially the first $1 trillion stock. But in a matter of months, everything has really been turned on its head. The stock has fallen roughly 35%. Its earnings came in relatively weak a month ago. And in a more general sense, there's real concern that Apple may have finally hit a wall. And the interesting question is why? What's actually going on here? So there are some very concrete concerns that have to do with whether or not Apple is really losing ground abroad to its competitors. And the issue there seems to be that Apple is simply not making the products that customers in certain parts of the world, most notably Asia, want. The most notable of those is what's usually called a phablet. It's a kind of ungainly, unwieldy creature, but it actually provides a very useful device for a lot of people, especially if you can't afford to buy both a phone and a tablet. And Apple also doesn't make a low-cost iPhone, which is hurting it in emerging markets as well, because there, obviously, phone carriers don't subsidize the price of phones, so you have to pay full price to get a phone. So some of this anxiety is specific to Apple itself. In fact, if you actually look at the history of Apple over, say, the past decade, even when Steve Jobs was in control, you really get a sense that people are constantly worried that the innovation engine is running out of steam. Apple products that now seem like self-evidently great ideas, at the time of their launches were often dismissed as fruitless gambles or as bridges too far or just as not especially great ideas. And that extends even to things like the iPhone. And this is really where we are now in some ways. It's been about 3 years since the iPad launched, and I think people are really starting to wonder what's next, or is there something that's next? And so people are wondering, is Apple going to release a television? Is Apple going to do this watch that people are talking about? Apple also makes people worried because Apple has actually succeeded by doing all the things that you're not supposed to do in technology markets. It's really operated on a closed platform model. It actually builds and designs hardware and software. It actually has emphasized premium prices rather than just going for market share. These are all things that in theory you're not supposed to be able to do in technology markets. And so I think people are always kind of thinking to themselves, well, Apple can't be doing this or shouldn't be able to do this, and so eventually they're not going to be able to do this.
Let's say you're working on this difficult-to-use PC. Let's say you'd rather be working on this easy-to-use Macintosh.
The most famous dictum about the technology business probably of the last 20 years is only the paranoid survive. And I think people have really taken that dictum to heart. The history of technology is really a history of companies that were once dominant falling on their faces. So think about Motorola or BlackBerry, or the company that people keep alluding to when they think about Apple, which is Sony. And so as a result, people tend to project the history of those failures onto the future. The problem with these comparisons is that they tend to be pretty facile. Apple is actually not much like Sony at all. It's a company that's really tightly focused, where Sony actually ended up becoming this kind of hypertrophied monster where it was trying to make everything under the sun. Sony's most profitable product right now actually is life insurance. And so I think there really is a really profound difference between them.
Hello, I'm a Mac.
And I'm a PC.
And I'm a PC too.
And what?
So I argue in the piece that Apple actually is in a much better position to keep innovating than other technology companies have been. But I have to say that I think that the broader sense of concern about Apple, while I don't agree with it, is actually totally understandable. Technology investing is not like investing in a lot of other industries. It really is a gamble. There is a black box element to it that gives investing in technology stocks a level of uncertainty that's a very hard thing to do. And it's just not surprising that it makes people really, really anxious when they actually try to pull it off.